Entonces, Josh es actualmente socio general de Capital Partners. Como les decía, es emprendedor serial, fue director de la compañía que fundó en el año 2003. Imagínense ustedes, voy a hacer una pregunta rápida, así como de sondeo. En una escala de 1 a 10, ¿qué tan complejo y demandante de tiempo dicen ustedes que es crear una empresa de cero? ¿Están dormidos todavía? En una escala de 1 a 10, ¿qué tan complejo y demandante de tiempo es crear una compañía de la nada? ¿10? Súmenle a eso que en el mismo año en el que ustedes están fundando la compañía, tienen trillizos. Pues Josh Berman en el 2003, cuando fundó su compañía, tuvo sus 3 hijos. Y voy a hacer una segunda pregunta. A ver, aquí nos demuestra el rango generacional. ¿Quiénes de ustedes conocieron MySpace? Ah, bueno, porque el mundo de las redes sociales no empezó con Facebook. De hecho, una de las grandes e importantes que tuvimos fue MySpace. Josh Berman, cofundador de MySpace, está aquí con nosotros, inversionista actualmente en Hyperloop y SpaceX, entre muchas otras compañías, y con un interés en América Latina nos acompaña. Así que démosle la bienvenida con un aplauso, por favor.
Great intro. Woo. Wow. All right. Good morning, everybody. This is so incredible. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. This is an amazing, amazing stage, and it's the most incredible camp. Marisol, thank you for inviting me. And Luis Fernando, thank you so much. I actually might borrow this from you guys. Maybe we'll do a license intellectual property deal. But we need this in California. I feel like a rock star on this stage, and this is so incredible. Growth Camp, wow. Growth is, to me, so important personally, as a child, as a student. As Marisol mentioned, I had a few great startups that I started as an entrepreneur. Many failures. She didn't mention all the failures, but I'll talk to you about some of the failures. And today, after 20 years of being an entrepreneur, about 2 years ago, I decided to become an investor, a venture capitalist. So I look at many, many companies all week long, and very few I decide to actually wire transfer some money and to invest into. And what I look for today is some of the qualities I had and some of the qualities I developed as an entrepreneur. And it starts with growth. Growth, to me, and the theme of my talk today is growth is such a mindset. Really, growth is everything you set your mind out to be, and growth is, to me, the most important thing. So that's why I love this camp. I love the workout sessions outside. This environment really fosters growth. And when I think about growth as a mindset, it really comes down to 3 things. And it's pretty much that simple. All my life, it's been about 3 principles of growth in my mind. And the first of that is the most obvious one, which is it a huge idea? Is it a big macro? I call it a macro trend. And as I look at investing and when I looked at starting my own companies, the most important thing was, is it a big enough idea? Today, I'm lucky enough to invest in some big trends. And even yesterday, there was a couple amazing entrepreneurs talking about transportation and aviation, which I think is wonderful. And I actually invested in one aviation company recently in Los Angeles, which is now launching in Europe. I've also invested in what I think is the most amazing leader we have today is Elon Musk and SpaceX. Talk about a macro trend, taking cargo into space, taking satellite systems into space is astonishing, and eventually taking people into space. And it's not only about my country, your country, it's about new countries. He talks about Mars and colonizing Mars, new planets. Think about that as a macro thesis and about growth. It's not even growing our own culture, it's growing the world in other places we've never imagined. So I look at leaders like that, and I am just really influenced and astonished about their growth plans. I also invested in a company called Hyperloop, another transportation company. Again, huge macro trend, and I'll talk in a few minutes about my own experience as an entrepreneur, where I failed and where I succeeded, but it's always been with a really big macro trend on growth. The second principle, as important as a big idea, is your team. And it seems obvious, okay, I have to have an incredible team to grow. And many of you have incredible teams. But your team is not just the people you work with. It's your family, it's your friends, and sometimes it's people you don't like to work with. It could be your board that you don't get along with. It could be investors that are constantly asking you for things, asking you to grow quicker, exit quicker. But it's so important that you pick the right team, and sometimes you'll be faced with decisions on who you want to let into your team and what you have to give away of your own company to expand your team. And I'll talk about that as well. So macro trend, your team, and the third principle I have is what you guys, everybody here is participating in, which I love, is networking. And networking, I have to force myself to network all the time in my community, in social events, and most importantly in work events. And your network is so important. And in my mindset, as I grow, I cherish my networks. I value them, and I have to spend a lot of time fostering them. I actually, about 10 years ago, there's a global network called YPO, which I barely qualify because you're supposed to be young. It's called Young Presidents Organization. And now I'm getting to be, I have a lot of gray. I joined this network, and I'm not much of a joiner. However, it's been so powerful for me and my business to grow. I spent so much time with my YPO network, my YPO brothers and sisters, learning about business, not only my business and my industry, but many other businesses, and learning about my family and their family. And it's been astonishing how well that network's helped me grow. So thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me share with you my journey, which I'm excited to share with you, about my companies and what I'm looking for in today's companies. So who is this guy, Josh Berman? Where did I come from? I grew up in Los Angeles, born and raised, and I talk about growth as a mindset, but entrepreneurial has been a mindset for me. My grandfather immigrated to the US. He started a movie theater business, always started his own companies, was very poor, did okay, then was poor again. And my father was also a big-time entrepreneur. He opened up auto body shops to repair your cars. He opened up furniture shops. He always figured out ways to make money. So I knew in my own mind and my own blood, I had a very entrepreneurial family. So with that said, I started off my career as an accountant, of all things. I don't know how that happens. But after growing up in Los Angeles, I was given a choice to go to many universities only in California. I wish I would have been able to go to Harvard, where I see another amazing network. But I went to another really good school where I learned how to surf a lot. So it's called UC Santa Barbara. And again, it helped my mindset and it helped me grow being in that environment where I did not know what I wanted to do. But what I realized at the macro environment, I asked my parents, what's the best job? What pays the most out of college? And it was to be an accountant, of all things. And if you know me, and hopefully I'll get to know many of you, my personality is not to be an accountant. So, however, I realized it paid the most money, and I decided to go into banking. No offense, Bank Coldex, it's an amazing industry, finance, but I realized after maybe 1 month, banking is not for me. However, understanding, going back to my growth mindset, I realized how important the opportunity I had. What I was able to do is sit into meetings and make sure I wouldn't even talk. I would just go to meetings with the smartest CFOs in the US, in major industries, and I would learn. I would learn about the macro environment. I learned about trends. I knew I was in the wrong job, but in my mindset, I decided I need to learn as much as I possibly can about being even in the wrong career, but what's going on and what these great leaders were thinking about. I learned how to do a profit and loss statement. I learned about the world of business. So although my mindset wasn't so happy because I was in the wrong career, I had a great experience learning from amazing people. Again, growth. So after that, I decided this is not for me. What a lot of people do in the US is we decide to go back to school, and many of you have done that as well. I decided to go to the University of Southern California, which I think is the second best networking school, maybe the best actually, with Harvard in the US. So the University of Southern California, incredible place, taught me a lot about networking, and it taught me a lot about your country because I met my best friend Mauricio, who helped bring me here, who's Colombian. The first day of business school, I met this very handsome Colombian man who I got to experience school with, learn about business, and we had a great bond. And I've stayed close with Mauricio in the US and in Colombia, which brought me here today. But again, the school, what I learned the most is it's an incredible place to network. And one last thing I'll say about the school is there is some pretty incredible, amazing entrepreneurs. Mark Benioff, who started Salesforce. Brendan Beck, who started the biggest gaming company in the world called Riot Games. There's a big dating site called Tinder where the guys came from USC. The leader and the finance leader of SpaceX is Elon Musk, but the head of finance, the CFO, is another USC graduate. So I've stayed close. Again, I'm talking about growth. I've stayed close to my university, stayed close to great leaders, and it's allowed me to expand my network to be able to invest. So I was very, very fortunate to go to that great networking school, meet my fellow teammates like Mauricio, and again, network and understand. So what did I do after? What did I do? I don't know. What did I do? After I left USC, I had an opportunity to, in Los Angeles, one of the most emerging, looking at macro trends, deciding what to do next, I saw this guy named Rupert Murdoch. And wow, Fox was pretty incredible. And I realized being in Los Angeles, being in entertainment, at a macro level, going back to my mindset, I need to work at Fox. So that's what I did. I went back and I did marketing for Fox for about a year or so. And I learned a lot about Rupert, and I got to meet a lot of his teammates there. But I realized, again, working at a big company was not for me. Going back to my roots, being an entrepreneur, I had to start something new. So what did I do? I woke up every morning, 5 a.m., met with some fellow teammates I had at school, went to the coffee shop. I don't think I could afford Starbucks. Actually, the guy yesterday that's opened up coffee shops, I wish we had that. Maybe we'll bring that to the U.S. I went to a coffee shop, and we worked on a business plan every day. And understanding, again, what's going on in the world, there was an opportunity. You guys might remember this. There was these things called floppy disks and USB drives. And today there's actually a company called Dropbox, which I use, and I love the company. So myself, I had to find a great teammate. I had to grab Mauricio. We partnered together, and we started a really cool company where you store your files up in the clouds. It was called X Drive. And this was back, whoa, Mauricio, this was 1999. And Mauricio and I were in a big macro trend. We were excited. We raised $100 million, is that right? And we spent all of it. I don't know what happened, but what happened was the markets collapsed. But again, the idea of storing your stuff online was the right trend. Today, many of us use Dropbox, but we did not succeed because the external markets collapsed. That was okay in my mindset because I learned how to market, I learned how to acquire users, and I learned how to make a great company, and I knew I'd be able to do it again. So what we did after XDrive, I created a marketing agency. And this is very interesting. I talk about teammates. So there I was. I raised, with Mauricio and a few other people, teammates, we raised a bunch of money and we lost it. The mood was very sad, but we learned a lot. I found a teammate that was willing, and no successes yet, that was willing to give me, we had a great idea, a great new marketing agency. We owned 100%, but I needed a little bit of capital. So a person came up, venture capital or vulture capital, came to me and said, Josh, we will give you all I needed was $300,000 to start my dreams, start a great company. And I was thinking, okay, I'll give you 1% of my company, 2%, 5%. He said, I want 50% of your company. He wanted me to give away my baby, my company, for $300,000. And then I got back to my mindset and I said, I'm going to do the deal. And we did the deal. I lost, and the company was super successful. We sold it to a public company, and this investor took half of all the profits. Now, people say to me to this day, why would you do that? And I talk to amazing entrepreneurs, and I did that because I needed that teammate. I needed that investor to come in, help me launch my company, give me the capital to grow, and it was a huge risk because I gave up half my company, but it helped launch my career to what I did next. And what did I do next? The same team sat in a room, and we saw, again, going back to growing macro trends, we saw, wow, everybody was going online, putting up profiles, and actually doing this thing called blogging. Back in 2003, only about 14 years ago, there was no such thing as blogging, and there was no such thing as putting up an online profile. But we saw this trend was emerging, and we were looking around, and this was long before Facebook, which is amazing. Long before MySpace, there was a site called Friendster, and there was a site called Craigslist, and there was a site called Evite. And we saw all these users using these sites. So we went through our Rolodex of all these URLs and all these names we owned, and one of them on the list was MySpace. And I'm like, oh, that's a nice, easy name to remember. Let's launch this business called MySpace. Let's add in all these features, what's going on in the macro world of online, what people were using online. People were blogging, people were dating, people were chatting. They were putting up a lot of pictures. Pictures were big. And we decided that's what we're going to launch. And what an amazing ride that was. So we launched MySpace. And the key to that was really going back to, of the three key things, the macro trends, our team, and the network is we reached out to the network of users that were really early adopters to putting their pictures up. And we literally, it was the thing, we were instant messaging men and women of a variety of creative fields one at a time to have them come to our site and invite their friends. And really that's what drove us to success. One user at a time. I remember our goal was to get the first 1,000. We got them on board. And luckily our competitors' technology was bad. We had the right technologists, the right team, and we were able to succeed. Another awesome thing that I learned from that roller coaster ride, which is very successful, was I was in negotiations, and I think, well, this looks like a private room, but I was in negotiations with this company called Viacom. And Viacom wasn't led by a person, I would say, as successful and as astonishing as Rupert Murdoch. And I was in negotiations with Viacom looking for, they had MTV, and they're like, MTV and MySpace are going to merge, and this is going to be great. But they could not get a deal done. They were very slow. It took 6 months, asking a lot of questions, and we were growing and growing. And we were trying to sell and exit our company, and they just could not move fast enough. And I met, because I used to work at Fox, if you remember, Rupert Murdoch came to our office on a Thursday, and we told him what we need for the company, and he wrote on a piece of paper, here's the deal. It has to be done on the following Monday. I announced to the world I bought you. So I have one group that couldn't have the mindset of growing quick enough, fast enough. We could not get a deal done. Then I meet an amazing leader, Mr. Murdoch, and in 5 days, he's able to create almost a $500 million transaction, which nobody slept for 4 days, but it was very successful and got done. And I think about it to this day, a lot of it, I think, has to do with his mindset about growth, not just about MySpace or cable or entertainment, but growing in general. He wanted to grow. He bought the Wall Street Journal after that. Incredible what he's been able to do as an entrepreneur and as a growth leader. And that's one of the pillars I look at, one of the more influential people I've met in my life and as an entrepreneur. And it was an astonishing experience. So, wow, that was amazing. MySpace was an incredible ride, an incredible exit. and I decided to actually work for Fox and Rupert for 2 more years, helping him launch companies. And this was my first little excitement about investing and starting new projects. And we launched a company called Slingshot Labs. We had a laboratory, kind of like, not as nice as these tents out here. I'd rather work there. But we had these hot, no air-conditioned rooms in Los Angeles where we launched a few different companies. And to me, I got really excited about this, about working with teammates, about helping other entrepreneurs grow. And it was my first real excitement about to become an investor. But I didn't do it yet. I decided, man, I have another one to do. And I found a great partner named Diego Berdakin from Argentina who was living in Los Angeles. And he was much younger than me, but we had another amazing idea for another company. And I could have said, okay, it's my company. I'm the guy that did MySpace. You're this guy from Argentina. You know, I own most of it. Forget that. I said 50-50. Let's start a new company. And that's what we did. So Diego and I created a great company. It was very fun. It was called Beach Mint. And we teamed up with many actors and actresses, Justin Timberlake, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, and many others. And we decided to, again, looking at what's going on in the macro world, people in the US are getting very comfortable shopping online, doing e-commerce online. So we felt, man, let's create a company that could do e-commerce online, and let's team up with amazing influencers to launch this company. And that's what we did. We started a jewelry company called Jewel Mint, a style company called Style Mint, a home decor company called Home Mint, a beauty company with Jessica Simpson called Beauty Mint. And we launched all these companies, and because of the macro trend, there's companies like Groupon and Guild Group. So we saw what was going on in today's macro environment. Again, I keep my theme as these 3 pillars of growth, and we knew we had to launch an e-commerce business, and which is what we did, which was a fun journey, a lot of success, and we sold it to a fashion company in the U.S. called Condé Nast, which bought the company. And I was finally able to exit using my principles of growth again, which was a great success, and which led me, so finally now I could start becoming and transition over to the investor side. And I'll tell you about that in a second. So, investing. What I realized, again, looking at the macro trends, California is a very interesting place. I live in the South, Los Angeles. Everything, a lot of excitement is Silicon Valley up north. And when I was an entrepreneur, many of my partners, I would always go take the flight to San Francisco and go meet all the entrepreneurs, which are amazing, not entrepreneurs, amazing venture capitalists. And the leaders is Silicon Valley. And it is incredible what has been built. And we don't need to compete with that in Los Angeles. We don't need to compete with that in Colombia. Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley. It's a giant, great leaders, great venture. But what you can do is understand that network, understand that team. And I decided I want to create a venture capital company in Los Angeles where it's not as competitive, where I could work with my teammates up in Silicon Valley, discover projects, what's going on in Los Angeles, bring them these opportunities, and try to become as a successful investor to doing that. We'll see. It's very early, but I'm off to a great start. It is really fun to work with those investors up in Silicon Valley. Some of the projects I've done, the first company I invested in is actually a company called Frontier Car Group. And again, the leader of that group, a great entrepreneur named Sujay Tile, third-time entrepreneur, has a mindset like me, understood selling your car, something as simple as selling your car is not that easy to do. And he watched, at a macro trend, a company in Germany launch. Basically what you do is you drive your car into a center, an inspection center. They'll take pictures of your car. They'll put it online, and in 45 minutes, your car's sold, and they'll give the consumer cash. So they'll sell your car almost like a pizza delivery, 45 minutes or less, guaranteed. So the leader was a third-time entrepreneur, saw the success in Germany. There was another competitor in India that was very successful. The company in Germany, I think, is doing $2 billion a year now. The one in India is doing $1 billion a year. And he decided to launch it in Mexico, Pakistan, Indonesia, and he's going to grow out in 3 more markets. And I was excited. I was telling Mauricio, there's actually an entrepreneur in Colombia who's doing the same model, and I'm going to go meet with them tomorrow. So I'm excited to talk about potential ideas together and explore different ways to work together. But again, it's a great example, great entrepreneur, saw a macro trend, has an amazing team, and is able to launch a product. And that was my first investment. And I wasn't able to get half his company as a venture capitalist. I only got maybe 1 or 2%. But it was so great for me to make that investment and to see him expand. And he's already been really successful. So as an investor, I look at making sure that entrepreneur has had success, making sure that entrepreneur is thinking at a macro idea, and making sure he has the right team and the right network to succeed. And then I'll make those bets and I'll make those investments. So it worked on my very first deal. It is global. He is in Mexico, and he's going to expand hopefully to more markets. So I'm excited about the Frontier Car Company. Also excited about, of course, SpaceX, which has been a great investment for our company. Again, my network helped me meet Elon and meet his team. And it is incredible how fast they're developing, and they have contracts all over the world. And that has been an amazing investment. Much later company we invested after they've become successful, but we still believe, I believe, it's going to be one of the most powerful companies in the world with tremendous upside. So I love, again, looking at amazing leaders, amazing environments, and these guys have an incredible team in Los Angeles, and they're doing fabulous work. So those are a couple that I'm excited about. Some of the other things I'm learning about venture is it's about sharing, and it's about collaborating. And in Los Angeles, probably similar to Colombia from what I'm learning from Mauricio, is Los Angeles, we know what we're good at. We're good at creating content. We're great at creating games. There's amazing gaming companies. And I just invested in a gaming technology that helps advertising. And basically what it is in a nutshell is there's so many games that are emerging and so many very quick games that are playing. The ads that you see, they're shrinking the games into 5-second demos, and that's the new advertising unit. And the company is exploding. It's doing so well. It's helping many game publishers with revenues and acquire new users. And it's something that Los Angeles is great at. So that's where I like to invest. Again, understanding what we're good at, making those investments into those fantastic companies. And it's really been an exciting thing to see. So I look at Los Angeles as a great content creator. We're not a chip maker. We let our friends in Silicon Valley do that. What we are great at is content. So I am super excited to be an investor in Los Angeles. I felt I carved out my niche. And LA is small. We're kind of like the fighters up in Silicon Valley. When there's a great company like an Uber or an Airbnb, there's a lot of fighting to get to those companies, to get to that entrepreneur. We take a different approach. We collaborate with all the other venture capitalists in Los Angeles. We invest together, and we try to help grow and create some pretty cool companies. There is a cool company, Snapchat, which is in Los Angeles as well, too. So we do have another great social company, which I'm proud of. Being at MySpace, I felt we had a little bit to do with the success of what I think is an amazing company, which is Facebook. And again, going back to Facebook, I think its leader, Mark, is a fantastic person. If you ever talk to him or hear his thoughts, it's pretty amazing, or just watch him work. And what I think he's done is, not only for his team at Facebook, for the teams he's acquired, he understands the trends. He sees a company like WhatsApp, and he says, that needs to be part of what I'm building. He sees a company like Instagram, which is incredible, and he thinks that needs to be a part of what I'm doing. So not only has he grown his own core company, Facebook, he's let all these other team leaders, when he makes mergers happen, run their teams and lead their teams. And I think that's pretty special. And that's why I'm so bullish on Facebook as well. So it goes back to things I've thought about, things I've learned as an entrepreneur, going back to those trends. One other thing I'll mention on a new product I'm excited about that I've developed, looking at understanding growth and understanding exiting. Exiting is an interesting word. A lot of entrepreneurs build companies, take time away from their families, take time away from their friends, and you're building it to grow and to try to find an exit one day. And the exit might be a public market. The exit might be I sell to another company or a public company. But what I realized is many companies want to stay private longer. However, they have thousands of employees. And what I've seen is some companies go public, but many don't. And companies, I think, are amazing companies. Uber, Lyft. Lyft is a company like Uber in the States. A company called Airbnb, a company called Pinterest. They're private, and they want to stay private longer. So what we're working on with some private equity teams, again, I couldn't do this myself, so I realized I had to give up some of the equity ownership. I found myself a great private equity partner, and we're developing liquidity programs so companies can stay private longer. Early investors, employees that work at those companies can now stay at these companies and not put so much pressure to get to public markets, to get some liquidity. So I found it fascinating what's going on. When I was a founder, you couldn't get any liquidity until you sold it. And you had to work so hard for so little money, and it was really challenging. Today, there's a huge trend where it lets founders, mostly just founders, get some liquidity. But I see where it's going, and I've teamed up with PricewaterhouseCoopers and private equity firms, and what we're planning on doing is giving out loans, having employees that have a lot of shares that are vested, pledge those shares, so we're able to actually give them loans to give them some liquidity so they could buy their first home, so they could send their kid to college or school. So we found it, or they could, for tax, there's a lot of tax advantages for a loan versus a sale. So we found this opportunity in the world of venture that I'm really excited about. And I'm really excited about launching that product as well. So as you can tell, growing up, super entrepreneurial, not being in the best career that I wanted to be in, I still had some great takeaways. Going through my first failure with Mauricio, losing my investors $100 million in a bad macro collapse, I learned so much. And my takeaways again were, man, in a bad job, I have a great experience to work with great leaders and learn as much as possible. In a company that didn't do well, I learned how to market. I learned how to develop my core skills, my teammates' core skills. I found people I want to work with for the rest of my life. So I took a lot of positive takeaways. And I've learned that through my entrepreneurial, which led me to succeed. It's led me to have a few other failures in between, but it's mostly led me to succeed. And throughout the journey, always going to community events, reaching out to other people that might not, I was always in the tech industry. I've met amazing bankers that now I work with. I've met amazing people in real estate that I now do work with. In a variety of industries, I've now met with amazing leaders who I can reach out to, rely on, and do a lot of work with. So my network is always expanding. Again, I joined YPO. You guys coming to this event is pretty incredible. I love to go to events like this. You constantly have to keep learning. You constantly have to keep talking to people that have had great experiences up and down. And you have to develop even beyond, you think about your team, it's not just the people you work with, it's your family has to be on board with what you're doing. Your board of directors, who are almost always your bosses, you have to pick that carefully. Your advisors, sometimes your strategic partners, and a lot of times you give away warrants, you give away equity. But if it helps you grow and it helps you succeed, I always believe you must do it. And it's led to great things for me. And I talk to many entrepreneurs that are so scared to give away any equity. And I can't stress it enough. We don't want to give it away stupidly. We don't want to make really bad decisions. And you will make some, I promise. But you'll make some great decisions, and you'll find some great partners to lead to success. Especially if you haven't had the first victory, you must find partners to get you to that first victory, because it becomes a little bit easier after you have that first success. And And I always tell my entrepreneurs that have good companies, how are you going to grow? How are you going to expand? You need to team up. You need to team up, create joint ventures. Get a joint venture in a different market with leaders that you know or trust or somebody in your network knows or trusts. Take a chance, explore, enter a new market with people you trust. It's very important to do that, to be able to grow successfully. And then also to grow, you have to understand what's going on in the macro world. Social marketing is so important. I can't just do traditional marketing anymore. I need to be social. What do I need to do? I need to team up with great YouTube stars. I need to team up with great agencies that know how to find the YouTube stars or the Instagram stars. I need to market. I need to experiment. Not to move all your marketing budget over to social, but you have to learn how to do it. Constantly go to events. Learn about what's going on in the trend. Learn about what your new customers want to do. And that's how I believe you're going to be able to succeed as well. I believe, so now today, so what I'm mostly doing is doing some speaking, investing, spending so much time with entrepreneurs. And I also believe as an investor, it's my obligation to sit down with them, and I go to their offices and I want to work with them as much as possible. Not just board materials and hear the financial updates, but how do we drive in users and how are we getting more distribution? And again, it goes back to how you're going to grow. And distribution is the key to many of our businesses, and it's a killer to many of our businesses on why your growth stalls. So I believe a lot, going back to how am I going to get more users, more revenue, it's thinking macroly, working with your teammates, going outside of your team. It's so important to find new people because you get very comfortable. I get comfortable with my team. They're so smart. They come up with good ideas. It's working. Forget that. You got to go outside and have your team will encourage you to do this to really grow. And that's why I get excited about making investments, finding these growth leaders that really understand these principles so I could sit with them, work with them, and bring them to new networks and to new people. To me, is really what gets me excited almost every day. So that's what I really love to do. And I also love to think about global investments. Again, like I was talking about, the car company I'm doing where you could sell your car really quickly is global. Of course, SpaceX is global. Hyperloop is another unbelievable company. Think about this. They're going to transport people so much faster on the Hyperloops, blowing our mind than anything ever today. Traffic is a problem. Traffic's a problem here. I thought Los Angeles was bad. Traffic's a problem in Bogota. Traffic's a problem in Los Angeles. Traffic's a problem in many places. And Hyperloop is an amazing solution, not only to move people, it's going to start with moving cargo and moving freight around. It's going to become cheaper, more efficient. And again, I look at leaders of those companies, and I'm just blown away with what they're doing. Actually, was recently in Las Vegas, where I watched a testing of the Hyperloop. Astonishing, incredible what they're making. You'll see them develop not just in the U.S., all over the world. I think they're doing amazing stuff in the Middle East as well. They're going to start shipping cargo pretty soon. So to me, it's very stimulating to find leaders that are focused on why everybody's here, which is growth. And I like to continue to grow as a person. I think Marisol said it best. The same year I started MySpace, 2003, I thought, wow, I can't work any harder. My wife can't be any more mad at me for not spending time. Then she told me she was pregnant, and I was so excited to finally have a family. And of course, as I'm working this hard and I'm thinking about growth, the doctor said there's twins. So I'm like, oh, I got to have 2 babies at once. But my personality, of course, I went back again. And to me, 2003, MySpace wasn't the most astonishing thing. It was the fact that doctors said, oh, there's a 3rd heartbeat. And I had triplets. So it is possible to grow your business at an exponential rate. And it's very unusual to have a family grow at that exponential rate, to have triplets. But I'm here on stage, barely walking around, very tired. But to tell you, my family's wonderful. The businesses are good. I'm so excited and invested in growth. And it's possible to launch a company like MySpace and have triplets at the same time. But again, it's about your team. My business partners kind of lift me up when I couldn't sleep. My wife, of course, lifted me up even higher. and seeing my children grow has lifted me up the highest. So growth, again, is why everybody's here, why Luis, Fernando, I applaud you. Marisol, what a great program, and why I was so excited to join. So with that, I will want Marisol, who, thank you so much for having me here.
So thank you, Josh. We have lots of questions from the audience.
Okay.
I'm going to try to translate on the go. So this is the first question from Sandra Milena Briseño. And she goes like this. Even though your profession as accountant wasn't for you, those knowledge have served to develop your profile? And if you hadn't been an accountant, do you think you would have been more successful?
So, man, accounting. I think accounting actually led me to become successful in many ways because I could now, as an entrepreneur, I was always the numbers guy, the finance guy. I always had a role. And it's led me to much success as an entrepreneur because I was able to read balance sheets, understand the metrics. Everything we do, you want to spend money, you acquire users, and it's so granular. Understanding the numbers was so important for me and for my businesses as an entrepreneur. And understanding the numbers as an investor is so important because you do want to have goals and you do want to measure things. However, the most important thing, again, is sitting down with the entrepreneur, going into the weeds and understanding the metrics, understanding cohort analysis, understanding growth numbers. So it was led to much success.
Second question we have here is from John Freddy Morales. He says, thank you for being here. Okay, and he's asking a question that it's very interesting. Now I'm reading it in Spanish and translated it in my mind. So what happens when investors see that an entrepreneur has lost money many times or repetitively?
Yeah. So inherently you would say that's bad. However, I say the opposite. I like investing in investors that have had experiences, not just positives, one maybe lucky venture, but had some failures as well, because you learn so much from your failures. I like investing in entrepreneurs, second, third, fourth-time entrepreneurs. Very rarely will I give money to a first-time entrepreneur, which is why I said do whatever you can to get the first win. I like to give money to second, third, fourth-time entrepreneurs. Even if they failed, they've learned so much, and I feel much safer with my money investing in that person. With that said, I always like to give money. I like when the person at least had one good hit or one medium hit. It doesn't have to be huge. Maybe made $1 million, maybe made $100,000. But they might have failed and lost a few $1 million, but I still like that person to invest in.
Great. Next question from Maria Anatilde Coy. Why do you think MySpace was overtaken by Facebook?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because I left. The founders left. Now, it was purchased by News Corp, and many times big media companies or big global companies, when they buy companies, they have their own agenda. They're public. They have to hit earnings and numbers. And we saw it. Facebook was private, so focused on the users. They didn't have to put marketing on the pages. They didn't have to worry about revenue deals. We had to go do business deals with Procter & Gamble and Old Spice campaigns versus more pictures for the users and activity feeds and news feeds. So in business, if you lose your way with your customer, I think somebody will overtake you. And we were purchased and had to produce numbers for a public company. Or they did. I left. But we saw Facebook. We knew at MySpace, we knew two things. We knew YouTube was going to be super successful, and we told Mr. Murdoch he needs to go buy YouTube immediately, but Google went in and paid more and bought it, which was so smart. And we knew Facebook was going to be incredible, and both came true.
Wonderful. Next question from Pedro Luis Gutierrez. How is the mechanism for employees to have actions or stock in the company in which they work? In the case that you were talking from PricewaterhouseCoopers, how does that work?
Yeah. So many companies, private companies, a way to recruit and retain employees is to give out stock options. So a lot of companies have about maybe 20% of all the company in an employee pool. So you could now recruit and have all the employees have an active role into that company. Now, many companies fail, so employees think, I need my salary, maybe my equity will be worth something one day. But when a company really takes off, and it's like Uber or Airbnb, and I'm an employee, it's very valuable stock. And it's great to see your teammates and your employees become successful as well. So what people get is stock options in private company stock, which, if your company's successful, will turn into could turn into very good income.
Great. Can you share some tips from tactics from user growth and retention? Asks Carlos Julia Fandiño.
Yeah, user growth and retention. I would say what our mistake at MySpace, so it's constantly not just remarket to your users, but have focus group. Have your users come to your office. Talk to them about features they like, features they don't like. The more you talk to your users, the much better off you're going to be. And find the users that are on your site the longest, that are your loyal customers, that are your evangelists. Empower them. You know, if it's discounts or reward them. But rewarding your users is so important, especially the ones that are vocal and powerful. I can't underestimate that.
Luis Gomez Echeverry is asking about how about the change in the technology companies. So he's saying in the era of the .com, you were looking for companies that would grow to be sold. And nowadays, people are looking for companies that are self-sustainable and have a social conscience. So as an investor, what do you think of this trend in new companies?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more than just growth today. Social conscious is at the forefront of every person's mind. So people are, as everyone's exposed to so much more stuff, you get information faster, you're more touched, there's more personality, there's more feeling. So it's super important as you're a business that you reach out back to your customers. You have a meaning for just existing, not just profits. So it does play a lot in the role of what companies are doing today. I still think, as an investor, I like to participate in growth sectors where there's a lot of growth opportunities rather than really, really small niche sectors. Because as a venture capitalist, you look for 100 times returns, not just 1 or 5% a year. So what I do as an investor is I try to find entrepreneurs that are socially conscious as well as in a big growth environment where they're disruptive. They could take over an industry. A lot of the companies I mentioned did not exist 10 years ago. There was no Uber. There was no Airbnb. There was no Pinterest. There was no Instagram. 20 years ago, there was no Google. And Apple was just re-emerging, and these are the biggest, some of the best companies in the world. There was no SpaceX 20 years ago. So think about today, 20 years from today or 10 years from today, somebody else will be here at this amazing conference, and there'll be 20 new companies, and 10 will be the biggest in the world, and nobody's started them yet. It's pretty cool to think about.
Okay, well, thank you, Josh, for being here, for your knowledge, experience, and your generosity. So give an aplauso para Josh. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
Great
very
to
much.
have you here.